Hey, welcome to I Have a Voice. I'm Dean Sunseri, HollyKem Sunseri.
Yeah, hey, I'm back. I have been gone for a long time. It's good to be back.
Yeah, so have you ever dealt with someone who's been intoxicated and had no idea what to do?
Yes.
Have you been the intoxicated one of
Yes, I've been the intoxicated one many
or
times.
dealing with one that's intoxicated?
Yes.
Look, alcoholism is a very serious problem, and
Yes.
many people deal with that. And so today we're going to give you 5 strategies on how to set boundaries.
Only 5.
5. Yeah, there's plenty
No,
more.
I mean, I'm joking.
5
Five's
strategies
plenty.
on how to set boundaries with someone who's either alcoholic or struggling with alcohol and that you're needing to deal with it. There's something about being in that moment where you freeze up. I don't know if you can identify with this. Like, what do I do now?
Well, and one, if they're intoxicated at that moment, you're gonna want to get a couple of these right, because they will flip it on you in a minute. It'll be all about you, is why they're like that.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump in. This is our, as I said, our topic today: how to set boundaries. You're looking good in that picture there.
Thanks.
How to set boundaries with an alcoholic.
Yes, Lord.
So HollyKem and I both have had a long history in dealing with this, personally, also professionally. HollyKem, ran a halfway house for. Yeah. She had a whole house full of girls that were addicts.
And then I worked at a hospital at River Oaks. I worked at a halfway house, Magnolia House, for 3 years.
Yeah.
Or 3.5. I can't remember. And then I worked at River Oaks for 3 years, or 3.5. One of them was 3.5, one was 3. So, and then I'm a recovering alcoholic and a drug addict, and January 10th of 83. So right now it's 39 years plus.
Yes. That's good for me too. So yeah, and we've owned an outpatient treatment program. We've done a lot of work. So we're going to help you today. We're going to jump right in. But before we get into how to set boundaries, and stay with us through this so you can get your 5 keys. But what is an alcoholic?
Yeah,
we're just going to define
question.
that. And a simple definition is an excessive or compulsive use of alcohol that results in an accumulation of negative consequences.
Right.
People don't understand that alcoholism actually is not measured by the quantity that you drink, even though that's important. It's measured by how many negative consequences are you having in your life surrounding and connected to your drinking.
Right.
If you look at some of the areas, you look at, is the drinking affecting my marriage? Is the drinking affecting, am I having legal issues? Do I have a DUI? Have I gotten any other trouble with legally connected to drinking? And am I having any physical issues like, liver problems? Ulcers. Am I having consequences at work? Am I not making it to work on Monday mornings? Am I skipping out of work? Is my production going down? Am I having financial consequences because I'm spending more money and not being productive and holding my responsibilities? Is it affecting friendships? Is it affecting my social life? Is it affecting my family and my relationship with children? So you look at those in a totality, and that's how you begin to assess whether someone would be considered an alcoholic. Huh?
Right. Well, and I think too, it's like the perception is that an alcoholic is somebody that's like living on the streets. And, if you take 100% of alcoholics, 10% end up on the streets. 90% are high functioning. And high functioning means they may be married, maybe they're on their second marriage, but they have a family, they work, they make money, they have friends. They may not have the same friends, but they have friends. So, am I high functioning or am I low functioning? Well, 90% are functioning alcoholics. They function in society. And because alcohol is acceptable, until you make too many fools out of yourself, it's socially acceptable. And then where we live in Louisiana,
socially acceptable times 2 or maybe 3, 4 maybe.
Maybe. I remember when I was in Las Vegas one time, I was at a conference and a guy asked me, I said I was sober, and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "New Orleans." And I said, "I don't know how many years I had at the time." He goes, "That's like dog years."
You get times 7.
I got times 7 for every year.
Let's look at the problem of alcohol abuse in the U.S. and look at these staggering statistics. 25% of individuals 17 and older said that they have engaged in binge drinking in the last month.
Wow.
That's a lot of folks drinking a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nearly 15 million people in the U.S. have an alcohol use disorder. That's the medical term nowadays. They don't use alcoholism as much. And the DSM is alcohol use disorder.
Yes, politically correct.
Yeah.
You're not very politically correct when you're an alcoholic, though. You might say the wrong thing at any moment.
Look at number 3 here. There are estimated 95,000 alcohol-related deaths per year in the United States. This is in the United States. If you're looking at this from outside of the United States, we're just talking about the United States. And 10% of the children in the U.S. live with a parent with an alcohol use disorder.
Wow.
So we're talking about a massive problem. You know, we have so many different epidemics nowadays. What's the new one? The monkeypox. Oh my goodness. Yes. But look, alcoholism and the effects of alcohol on our culture have been an epidemic for a long time. Yes. And so we want to help you not only learn to set boundaries, but also really how to interact that maximizes the chances of helping them to get some help. Right. Because setting proper boundaries with an individual that's suffering will actually increase the chances of them recognizing their own behavior and getting some help.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too is that when you're under the influence, as I would say, you're pretty distorted as the alcoholic. However, when you are waking up, whatever that time that is, but when you're waking up just spiritually, emotionally, mentally, you have a problem. Now, we might not say that out loud to you or to the rest of the world, but
honey, I'm a drunk.
No. However, we do say it to ourselves. Yeah. So when you are when someone reaches out, in the most lovingest way.
Oh, I see. The person that's setting the boundary.
The person that's setting the boundaries, exactly. Then the opportunity to be heard, the person that's communicating to the alcoholic, is way higher.
Yeah.
So the goal is, it's one thing to have boundaries. It's another thing that we would love for you to have results.
Yes.
Because everybody's suffering. The alcoholic, you're suffering, the family's suffering, everybody's suffering. So it's not just about, oh, let's have a boundary so, that person will act right. No, because in the system of alcoholism, there's a lot that goes on because everybody's trying to survive.
Yeah, I remember having a client that said, my husband will never stop drinking. Will never stop drinking. We worked together for a while, and she started changing her behaviors and setting boundaries. And there was a day that he woke up. I remember when she came to counseling and reported it. He said, I have a problem. I need some help.
Right.
It went to treatment. Why? Because she started doing things differently.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what HollyKem's talking about. But let's talk about what is a boundary.
That's a good question.
A boundary is a line that sets a limit of an area or activity.
Yeah.
It's a line that divides order from what? Disorder.
Right.
Yes. So let's give some examples just in general of boundaries. On a 2-lane highway, that middle line is very important.
Yeah.
That boundary, the car needs to stay within that boundary, and the other car coming the other way needs to stay within that boundary. Because if it's violated, it causes what?
A wreck.
A wreck. It causes injuries. It causes problems. That's why boundaries are so important. Football has a sidelines that's an out of bounds. Can you imagine trying to play football and there's no out of bounds and you just keep running to the side and running and there's no order? Then it creates massive disorder. If you go to school, there's a grading scale, right? The grading scale is a boundary. If you perform between 80 and 90, you get a B, and it's a good grade. It's a passing grade. If you get below a 60, trouble with your parents.
Right, yeah.
But
and you haven't learned the information.
or you haven't learned the information.
Right.
So these boundaries help, or indicators, to create order from disorder and to make sure you're doing your responsibilities in school successfully. There's property line boundaries. Can you imagine if there was no boundary between you and your neighbor, and they started claiming your backyard, and then they claimed your refrigerator, and then they claimed your food and your car? No. This
Right.
is where my stuff begins and where your stuff begins, right here. Laws are boundaries. So when you start to break down what a boundary is, it's actually things that create order in life. And we're talking about creating order in a relationship. There's psychological boundary examples. The military chain of command,
Right,
is a very strong boundary. When you have a superior that says, run over there, even though they're shooting at you, you need to go right now. You need to follow the command because there's a greater plan. If people did not follow that order, it would create disorder, defeat, and death. Classroom rules, family rules, those are all examples of boundaries, and that's why they're so important. The question is, how well do you set boundaries, right, with those that you love? And as HollyKem said, and perhaps you can say more about this, Holly, is that when someone's intoxicated, they're very insensitive to boundaries.
exactly.
So tell us more about that.
Well, one of the things that the alcohol, the drug itself, does is, if you've never had a drink, but it loosens you up. Let's just go there. Okay, so if you are allergic to alcohol, your body doesn't function properly. When you drink alcohol, you're definitely not going to be thinking correctly. Okay, so if you're trying to talk to someone that is thinking is inebriated, it's got alcohol infused in it, the communication, they're not going to hear you correctly, exactly what you're saying. You can go around a bar and see, not that everybody in a bar is alcoholic, but you have a couple of drinks, everybody's laughing about whatever. Most people don't even know what they're laughing. They hear somebody laughing, they start laughing. So it's like we're not really on this, level of high level communication to get a problem solved. So in that's like in social. Well, when we're trying to set a boundary, the last thing you want to do is communicate with somebody that's inebriated.
Right.
That is the worst thing you want to do. That is not going to work. And in that, I don't know where else you're going with this, but in that, if you pick up and fix everything, when they wake up in the morning, they do not see what they've done.
Yeah. So when they wake up,
right.
And really, when you're dealing with someone that's inebriated, why don't we want them to drive? Is because they don't have good boundaries, they don't have good perception, they don't have good judgment, and it's in all areas. So let's look at rule number 1. Get into the rules of how to set boundaries with an alcoholic or someone that's abusing alcohol. Practice using boundary setting words, such as no. Go ahead and say no.
No.
Say it again.
No.
Or I can't. Or that is unacceptable. Or will you drive me to the grocery store so I can buy 2/5 of vodka? Let me think about it, right? Let me think about it. Or no, as I have there. No. Look, no is the number 1 word to practice.
Yes, in the mirror.
If you're learning to set boundaries.
Right. And no is a sentence. It's N-O period. N-O period. N-O period.
What do you mean no?
Right.
It's a complete sentence.
It's a complete sentence. I don't have to explain why I'm saying no. It's just no.
Yes. So that's the first really boundary word that you need to practice consistently.
Right.
Go ahead, say it.
No.
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 No. No. No. No. Not today. No. No.
Can you give me $100 to go
No.
get some drugs?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
No. Right.
So that's rule number 1. Number 2 is, in setting boundaries, is stay focused on your own values and let go of the emotional agenda of the alcoholic. What do I mean by that? Stay focused on your own values and not on the emotional agenda of the alcoholic. Oftentimes, we describe that as codependency. When I lose myself, I lose my values, I lose all these things, and I give in to trying to satisfy the emotional agenda of the other person. You know, I can remember young girls, teenagers. No, I didn't really want to have sex with him. He was drunk and I was scared to lose him. But even though I really didn't want to do that, I went ahead and did that so I don't lose my boyfriend. Well, that's losing your own values for the sake of satisfying the emotional agenda of someone who's inebriated, because that person may have regret asking you that when in their right mind.
Exactly.
And so you need to know that what are your values, and we give you permission to stand up and to be able to live by them, even if there's pressure from the outside not to. And that only gets accentuated when someone's struggling with an addictive system, because unfortunately, when a person is addicted, they begin using their emotions to manipulate, right?
Yeah.
They begin to use their anger. They begin to use
become a bully.
Fear. They become a bully. They begin using all kinds of tactics. And as long as they keep you focused on their emotional agenda, then they know that they may be able to control what you do. So the second rule is to allow yourself to stay connected to your own values and to live by those. Number 3, setting boundaries with an alcoholic. Communicate your boundaries or discontent, and you can talk more about this, before or after the drinking, not during.
Right. Exactly. Well, if you do it during, you're not going to get anywhere, and they're going to pick a word that you said. They're going to make it about you. They're going to switch the conversation. And I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with somebody that is drunk, you're not going to win. Okay. You may think you're going to win, but you're not going to win. They're going to come at you at all angles because they're not in their right mind. They're not in their true self. They are completely in a protective modality, and they want what they want when they want it. It's called King Baby in the 12 steps. So King Baby will win and you will get destroyed.
You ever been around a King Baby?
Yes, I've been around a lot of King Babies. I was married to a King Baby. Yes, I divorced.
Right now?
No, I divorced a King Baby. It was not a good gig. And I was a King Baby myself. So, I mean, I can't just say it was all about him. So in that process, it's like you want to have set them before and or way after, not when they're inebriated. And the biggest problem with setting the boundary, I know you got this somewhere, is you have to stick to it.
That's true.
Do not set a boundary. You don't have that written down?
No, go ahead.
Do not, I'm telling you, do not set a boundary that you do not stick to, because right then they are going to bowl you over like a bowling pin. That is not going to work. The bowling ball is coming and you're going to get smashed. Okay. If it's a no, it's a no. I mean, you have to stick to the no. If you've got to get in the car and leave, if you've got to go stay in a hotel, I don't care what you got to do. But a no is a no. When they realize a no is a no, they'll back off. They're not going to back off right away because it's like a test. They don't believe your words.
Yeah.
Your words have to be your words. If you can't make it, if you cannot be concrete about it, do not set the boundary.
Yeah,
you will be destroyed.
So that's the question for you. Write in the comments. Have you ever tried to communicate with someone who was inebriated and get somewhere and found great frustration?
Yes.
Tell us yes or no. I'm sure we all have experienced that at some point. In communicating boundaries, use this formula. When blank happened, I felt blank. Mm-hmm. When you said you were coming home at 10 o'clock and you showed up at 2:30 in the morning, I felt afraid and angry.
You're right.
So you be specific about the behavior.
And you don't do it at 2:30 in the morning
No, you wait. You wait till the next morning
at breakfast.
at breakfast, or write a note,
Right.
or send a text nowadays.
Yeah, text.
But communicate using what specifically happened and how it impacted your heart. You don't say, you said you would come home at 10:30, you no good drunk. And why you're always drinking, and you never follow through on your word, and you're a horrible person, and I don't know why I ever married you.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
That's not going to
You
work
don't.
nearly as good as you said you would come home at 10:30. You showed up at 2:30, and I'm really angry and was afraid. So you communicate how it impacts you. And that's how you begin to intervene. When you say, is that setting a boundary? Yes, in a sense, it's communicating what you're not okay with.
Right.
And it's the way you communicate it that increases the chances of it getting through.
Right.
Yeah. You're a good communicator.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm not even drunk, and she's communicating like that to me. Confronting certain things,
Exactly.
yeah, of course. But she always says, I love you enough to tell you the truth.
That's right.
That's
Well, that's a good point, because you only tell somebody that you willing to risk the relationship with the truth.
Yeah.
If the relationship's not worth it, then you're not going to say, you're just going to let it go. So, the truth is very important. It's how we communicate the truth. Because when you start getting into you statements, you lost them. You lost anybody, really.
Rule number 5, as a guideline for boundaries, balance between self-care and the care of the alcoholic. Jesus said it like this: love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Right.
We get in trouble when that gets out of balance. If I'm just overly concerned about loving the person who's suffering with alcoholism and I totally neglect myself,
right,
that's when I get into what we call enabling.
Yeah.
I start compromising my values. I start compromising who I am. I start compromising self-care. And I start getting run down just as much, if not more, than the alcoholic.
Definitely. Well, and anytime somebody can do something and you do it for them, it's one thing about being caring and loving and service and all of that. But when you're taking the slack for everything, then it's not seen that they're not being responsible. They're not picking up their clothes. They're not whatever they're doing. Like, if they don't see it, it can go away in their mind because they're inebriated. And if they're in a blackout, that's a whole nother thing, that they function as though they are communicate with you and they see it. We have a lot of people in prison like this, that they really believe they did not kill somebody in an accident, but they did. And I mean, they go to prison for that. It's awful. So, if you're having a communication with somebody and they tell you they never said that, they didn't do that. Unfortunately, the brain is so inebriated that they're communicating with you, but they have no memory, which is a sign of alcoholism. That's one sign. There's many, but so that's why you don't want to put yourself in that situation, because then all of that, whatever ugliness was been said, you remember. They don't remember, but you remember.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot to work through that and erase those memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can forgive, but it's hard to forget those things. So you don't want to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah. And that, really brings us to the fact that there's a balance between self-love and loving the other person.
That's right.
And that I'm not saying just love yourself and do your own thing and forget about them. No, you have to be loving and care for the other person. I think when you're dealing with someone that is struggling, if you want them to get help more than they want to get help for themselves, then that's when we start to get in trouble. Of course, I want a loved one to get help, but I can't fight for them harder than they're fighting for themselves, because then I get into doing things for them that they actually really need to do for themselves.
Because we want them to. I mean, I remember when Moses was little and he kind of put together that I had been married before.
Mm.
And he said, Mama, I know you're in the car with it. Mama, why did you get a divorce? And I said, because he didn't love himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but Mama didn't love herself either. It was both, you know. And he got real quiet and he said, Mama, I love myself. And Daddy, do you love yourself? And he said, yes. And I said, I love myself, because he wanted to make sure we wasn't getting a divorce. Okay. But it was because I didn't love myself enough and my first husband didn't love himself enough that we continued to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, I started to love myself. He started, but then he went back to using, and that's when I left, because I didn't want to live with an active alcoholic and he didn't want to be sober. So in that process, you know, when you allow them to see how they're not loving themselves and how it feels for you, then a lot of times people wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, because we want you to wake up. We want people to wake up that's suffering. I mean, alcoholism is suffering. You're suffering when you're in a family member, and the person that has it is suffering. It is a suffering. It's not like, oh, I just chose to be this. I may say that, I may act that way, but it's not true. Because, you know, what I always say is, you know, a lot of people say, well, I'm not an alcoholic because I can stop. Yeah, alcoholics control alcohol. People that are non-alcoholic, they never have to think about when they're drinking and when they're not. If you're alcoholic, you're thinking about, I'm not going to drink today, but I'm going to drink tomorrow. I'm only going to drink on Friday after 5, or I'm only going to drink after I get off of work, or I'm only drinking here, or this is how many I'm going to have. Now, there may be a moment when you go, I've had it. So what? I'm drinking today because I want to.
Yeah.
But
well, by fighting
right
to control it so much is an indication that it's controlling you.
Exactly. But people think that because I can say no,
right,
I'm not an alcoholic. But that's not true. The person that's really not alcoholic, they don't even think about drinking until they're somewhere and somebody goes, you want to drink?
We need to do a whole show on what is alcoholism, because it has nothing to do with the quantity that you drink. It has everything to do with what happens when it gets into your body and how it makes you act.
Yeah, and also how it's talking to you.
Yeah, when you're not.
When you're not.
So there's a great resource that we want to share with you. And it's actually it's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a classic. It's like the Bible of alcoholism.
Yes.
And it was written by a guy, Bill Wilson, years and years ago, who suffered with bad alcoholism, had a spiritual experience and found his way out. And he writes down the steps that he took. But it has a lot of, it was written long ago, but it's still very relevant today. If you're interested in reading more about this, we have a link down in the description, and it's called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or just Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an excellent resource. It has practical steps, and it also has lots of stories. The second half of the book is stories of people that have overcome alcoholism, and just reading about their histories will give you lots of insight about how to handle your own particular situation. Yeah. We also have, HollyKem and I have done a video on addiction. Are you helping or are you hurting? Because we all do things to, out of love, to want to help the person. But sometimes what we're doing is helping them. Sometimes it's hurting them. So I really encourage you, if you're dealing with someone consistently that's struggling with alcohol or any type of addiction, I want you to click on this